all the ways that Donald Trump is connected to Project 2025. Donnie is out here losing his mind trying to distance himself from Project 2025. Unfortunately for Donnie, we've got a nice, easy-to-understand list of all the people you work with who authored it.
I'm a very stable genius.
Chapter 1's author is Rick Dearborn, Trump's White House Deputy Chief of Staff. Chapter 2's author is Russell Vought, Trump's Director of the Office of Management and Budget. Chapter 3 is Dennis Dean Kirk, Trump's Senior Advisor at the Office of Personnel Management. Chapter 4, Christopher Miller, Trump's Acting Secretary of Defense, who coincidentally resisted deploying the National Guard on January 6th. Chapter 5, Ken Cuccinelli, Trump's Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security. Chapter 6, Kiron Skinner, Trump's Director of Policy Planning at the Department of State. Chapter 12, Bernard L. McNamee, Trump's Commissioner of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Chapter 13, Mandy M. Gunasekara, Trump's Chief of Staff for the EPA. Chapter 14, Roger Severino, Trump's Director of the Office of Civil Rights. Chapter 15, Ben Carson, Trump's Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. Chapter 16, William Perry Pendley, Trump's Deputy Director of the Bureau of Land Management. Chapter 17, Gene Hamilton, Trump's appointed counselor to the Attorney General. Chapter 18, Jonathan Berry, Trump's appointed counsel to the Assistant Attorney General. Chapter 19, Diana Furchtgott-Roth, Trump's Deputy Assistant Secretary at the Department of Transportation. Chapter 20, Brooks D. Tucker, Trump's Chief of Staff for the Department of Veterans Affairs. Chapter 20, Thomas F. Gilman, Trump's Chief Financial Officer of the Department of Commerce. Chapter 23, Jennifer Hazelton, Trump's Senior Vice President at the Export-Import Bank. Chapter 24, Paul Winfrey, Trump's Deputy Assistant to the President for Domestic Policy, Deputy Director of the Domestic Policy Council, and Director of Budget Policy. Chapter 26, Peter Navarro, Trump's Director of the National Trade Council, also currently imprisoned. Chapter 27, Robert Bowes, Trump's Senior Advisor to the Assistant Secretary of HUD, and advisor to that scum-sucker white nationalist Stephen Miller. Chapter 28, Brendan Carr, appointed by Trump as Commissioner of the FCC. Chapter 29, Hans von Spakovsky. Trump appointed him as a member of the Presidential Advisory Commission on election integrity. And finally, Chapter 30, Adam Kandub, Trump's Deputy Associate Attorney General. Every single one of these names is a Trump appointee, Trump hire, Trump associate. They are his close personal friends and allies, and they wrote Project 2025. The story of Project 2025, Part 1. A very brief history of the Heritage Foundation. To understand Project 2025, you have to understand the Heritage Foundation, created during the Nixon administration by Joseph Coors, a far-right extremist whose paranoia once made him force his employees to take lie detector tests. We'll have more on Coors in a later video, but suffice it to say he's a real piece of work. Branding itself a think tank, the Heritage Foundation took its considerable money and influence to Washington, D.C. to champion explicitly racist, anti-science, anti-worker, anti-woman philosophies. They provided funds and legal support to a preacher who bombed schools he deemed too multicultural. They lobbied for decades to keep gay marriage illegal and provided money to the ADF, a designated hate group. And they blamed the families for the shooting in Uvalde, Texas. Their actions and agenda are so clearly evil, it's hard to make a caricature of them. The current president of the extremist Heritage Foundation has explicitly stated that religious devotion and spirituality are the only ways to live, and that the goal of government is to conform to his specific religious beliefs. This was their guide as they sat down to write Project 2025, their Bible for the future of America. What is Project 2025? Part 2. Donald Trump's mandate for extremist religious control of every aspect of your life. In 1981, the Heritage Foundation began their Mandate for Leadership series. These roadmaps are given to politicians as a guide for how to coordinate extreme conservative views across government departments. from the federal to local level. Trump received one of these political Bibles in 2016 and religiously followed it step by step. The foundation staffed his White House, something no think tank has ever done. He instituted a ban on Muslims at their bidding. He created the largest tax cut for billionaires ever, and essentially did whatever they asked. In many ways, while Trump was elected, it was the Heritage Foundation who was president. A majority of Trump White House staff was brought on to craft the newest version of the mandate, known now as Project 2025. And while Trump himself says he's never heard of it, that is a clear, bold-faced, and pathetic lie. Donald Trump, along with other 2024 Republican candidates, received one-on-one briefings on Project 2025, just as the Heritage Foundation has done for countless other elections. On top of that, the majority of authors are former and current members of his campaign and White House, people he's worked closely with for over a decade now. The only possible answer as to why he'd lie about this is sheer panic. Even Donald Trump realizes just how insane and just how radical his administration will be, and he is determined to hide his intentions from American voters. Because if he's elected, our country is about to become a radical, extremist religious theocracy. What is Project 2025? Part 3, A Dictator's Dream. Project 2025 and Donald Trump believe in their made-up term called the Unitary Executive Theory. Their stated goal is to utterly destroy the government and bring everything under the control of a single man, Donald Trump, who is immune from prosecution and not beholden to any laws himself, with complete and utter control over everything. They will do away with the separation of powers, remove all checks and balances, and institute mass prosecutions, jailing anyone who disagrees with them. Steve Bannon, one of the Heritage Foundation's choices for a senior position, stated loudly, "We will go out and find the conspirators, not just in government, but in the media. We're going to come after you." Bannon, who is currently in prison for fraud, stated he would hunt down any dissidents and traitors. There is no doubt that Project 2025 is a wish list of a dictator. Its written and declared intent is to install Donald Trump as a king who has complete say over federal, state, and local laws, able to create and ignore them at his whim, and creating authoritarian states so vast we could no longer in good conscience call our country America. So much for small government Republicans. What is Project 2025? Part 4, Absolute Evil. One of the many failures of Trump's first term, and there were many, was his policy of family separation for immigrant families. Directly ordered by Donald Trump, he wanted the children of immigrants imprisoned as a warning to anyone else. It was a disgusting and callous move that to this day left many children without parents. Children were left locked in cages with limited food, no clean water, no ability to bathe, no blankets, no change of clothes for months on end. Only a concentrated effort to shame Donald into pretending to have feelings saw him end this policy. It is without a doubt the single biggest reason he should never have power again. So of course, Donald and Project 2025 plan to not only bring it back, but ramp it up nationwide. They've vowed to round up millions of people across the country, separate them with no means of contact, and house the children in military-style camps while deporting the parents. They've vowed to raid schools, churches, and hospitals, and institute a de facto form of martial law, suspending any and all rights that get in their way. Now, I'm just spitballing here, but I don't think it's ever been a good, moral, or humane action when any country rounds up an ethnic, religious, or social class and sticks them in fucking prison camps. The main architect of this plan is the melted candle in human form, Stephen Miller, Trump's right-hand advisor, who is an avowed supporter of white nationalist ideals and proud xenophobic monster. This is what Donald Trump has wanted for nearly a decade now. For whatever reason, he specifically enjoys the pain and anguish parents feel when their children are ripped from them, never to be seen again. What is Project 2025? Part 5. Donald Trump wants to bury Elmo in a shallow grave. The Heritage Foundation has been obsessed with public broadcasting for decades. They have long desired to silence any voice that differs from their own myopic fundamentalist views. PBS is a particular thorn in their side, and being the vile little group they are, they believe the only people who should be teaching children are themselves. PBS isn't their only target, of course, but something about Sesame Street really seems to make Lil Donnie Trump so upset. For the last few decades, Sesame Street has had a long-running occasional visitor, Oscar the Grouch's personal hero, Donald J. Grump, an angry, mean, sadistic little trash goblin with a shock of orange hair. Getting dunked on by a children's show left Donnie in a little bit of a complete and total narcissistic meltdown. So when the religious fundamentalists at Heritage suggested shutting down PBS, well, Donnie was excited. Mike Gonzalez, the author of this particular section of 2025, has posted article after article about how much he hates public broadcasting. One particular sticking point for him is the 2020 election. He believes that had NPR and PBS not been an obstacle pointing out Donald Trump's lies, they could have swayed public opinion into believing that 2020 was stolen. He blatantly states that public broadcasting was a roadblock to Donald Trump's attempted coup. No wonder they want to bury Elmo in a shallow grave.